Hello, back with another video, same day, same night. I'm going to do another part on this Charlie Kirk video. In this video, um, we need to see more truth about what's being revealed on him. You need to see the whole, some people need to see the whole story and what he actually said out of his own words. People really need to think about, and no one was laughing because he passed away. Nope, I don't think it's funny that he passed away and left us suffering. But there's people, the world has to understand that there's some people in this world is cold-blooded. They were cold-blooded to Trayvon Martin's family. They were cold-blooded to Breonna Taylor's family. They were cold-blooded to George Floyd's family. And they for the Plano Castillo, then they considered them human. Being when it comes because the shade of color of their skin. They criminalized them. And they celebrated the police. But now, and people like Carlie Kirk plotted that stuff for the police.
Was an absolute game changer. Almost all of the smart people that
Yeah, we back. Now today we're gonna be talking about Charlie Kirk. Obviously, big story in the headlines. And, I see a lot of folks, sending their sympathies and their condolences and things like that. Especially those from the black community, which of course it doesn't surprise me. Typical fashion. Always extending the olive branch, extending love and friendship and condolences to those who would never do the same. But of course, due to the fact that I understand the psychology of my people, I'm not surprised by this. But, it's just funny to me because, on my channel, we talk about a variety of topics, geopolitics, international affairs, with a particular focus on the African continent, especially. And on the African continent, we know that one of the main areas of conversation is the Sahel region. And we know that in that region of Africa, there's a lot of instability, terrorist groups, and we know the origin of those terrorist groups. It goes back to the fall of Libya. And we know that Libya fell because of external intervention, foreign powers who had their own economic interests on the table and they were trying to protect. And due to the fact that they viewed the government in Libya as an obstacle to those economic interests, they decided to remove that obstacle by engaging in violent regime change, arming certain terrorist groups, arming certain so-called rebel groups to topple the government, thus laying the groundwork for them to cut special deals for the natural resources. And later on, fast forward to today, we are still dealing with the after effects. We are still dealing with the terrorists, the instability, the jihadists, etc., etc.
at Byron Volkswagen, we've been
Oh,
family
yeah,
owned
man.
since 1897, built on trust, driven by innovation.
And now,
Terrorists, the instability, the jihadists, etc., etc. The fall of Libya did not only affect Libya alone, but it actually spread into neighboring countries. It spread into Mali, spread into Burkina Faso, spread into Niger, spread into northern Nigeria. And now, almost 15 years later, we have millions of families that have been displaced. We have millions of individuals who are now refugees and asylum seekers who have been driven from their homes. We have many who have died in the desert and in the ocean trying to flee to safety. And of course, we can't forget about the innocent civilians, the hundreds of thousands who lost their lives to terrorism due to the jihadist groups and the terrorist groups in the region, who, like I said, found their origins in the fall of Libya, the fall of Gaddafi. Now, what does this have to do with Charlie Kirk? Of course, we know Charlie Kirk, he passed away the other day, but it's so ironic because I see so many people sending out sympathies and condolences and, oh my God, think about his family and things like that. But if you go back during that time, when you had nations like France and the United States and the United Kingdom and essentially NATO collectively toppling that regime, which led to the death and the overthrow of Gaddafi. If you go back during that time, Charlie Kirk was actually celebrating the deaths of African leaders. Charlie Kirk was celebrating the death of Gaddafi. Now, why was he celebrating the death of Gaddafi, right? If you go back, October 20th, 2011, he said, Libya, give us your oil, right? And coincidentally, October 20th, 2011, that was the day that Gaddafi got killed, right? So the day Gaddafi got killed, Charlie Kirk was like, listen, give us the natural resources. We coming for the resources. We coming for the natural resources. We coming to Africa. We coming to pillage. Now, like I said before, that military adventure that led to the toppling of the regime in Gaddafi, that destabilized the entire region, where even neighboring countries still to this day are still battling against terrorism. Now, did Charlie Kirk have any love in his heart, have any sympathy in his heart for the after effects of what could take place? No, he just cared about the natural resources. Oh man, we coming for the oil, right? That's all we need. We don't care about the people. We don't care about the deaths and the murder and the violence and the displacement and the refugee crisis. We don't care, right? We coming for the natural resources. We coming for the oil, and that's all we need, right? So on the day Gaddafi was murdered, Charlie Kirk celebrated his death, right? Simply because he was excited at the thought of American companies going over to Africa and pillaging the resources. Now, fast forward to today, do you know that that region is now classified as the epicenter of global terrorism? Simply because Western companies wanted to get access to some oil. That's all. That entire region was destroyed simply for the interests of Western multinationals. And Charlie Kirk saw that as a personal victory for himself. So, I'm sorry if I don't have it in my heart to sympathize with somebody who celebrated the destruction of my mother continent. When it comes to me, there are certain things that are what I call a red line. When you attack the continent, even verbally, right? If you slander the continent, if you verbally slander the African continent, I view you as an adversary. If you physically attack the African continent, I view you as a eternal enemy. If you celebrate death, murder, violence, and destruction and bloodshed on the African continent, listen, I don't want to get my channel removed, but I'll just say this. I'm not exactly going to feel any type of way if you happen to fall victim to an unfortunate accident. And it's so ironic, right? Because if you look at the way that Charlie Kirk passed away, falling victim to gun violence with a high-powered rifle, that's actually the way that many victims in the Sahel, on the African continent, in the nations that are dealing with terrorism, that's how many of them also got killed, right? When the jihadists come in on a motorcycle and kill the civilians, that's how many of them also get killed, right? So in a twist of irony, Charlie Kirk got killed in the same way that innocent civilians in the Sahel also get killed, being chopped down with high-powered weapons. Charlie Kirk died like an innocent civilian in a West African village. And listen, I'm not making this video to dance on his grave or anything like that, but I'm just saying it's a reason why you're not getting no sympathy from me. Besides all the problematic rhetoric you regularly threw out into the atmosphere, but the fact that you celebrated the destruction of an African country, which led to the destruction of multiple African countries and millions of displaced families and so many victims of gun violence and so many refugees that died in the desert, in the ocean because of that. And you celebrated that. You went on your social media and celebrated the murder of an African leader. And I'm not even a Gaddafi fanboy, but the facts are the facts. When Gaddafi was in power, that region was 10 times more stable than it is today. Gaddafi was a force of stability in that region. And once he was removed off the chessboard, the region fell into chaos to where even neighboring countries fell into disarray. Now, the one positive of that is due to the fight against terrorism, that is how we got the leaders that we have today. President Assimi Goïta, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, and President Chiani. That's the one positive. But the reason they came to power is because of the instability and the terrorism that was unleashed in the region, right? And I even said it on my social media earlier today, right? I was like this. He supported the destruction of an entire region, and now he is dead, just like the Africans who fell victim to the terrorism unleashed by NATO, right? So, the same way you celebrated the destruction of an entire region, right? You didn't just celebrate the death of one person. You celebrated the destruction of an entire region, right? An entire region. Take a look up on the screen. The regional balance of power and the overall political situation in the Sahel region has undergone radical changes since the Arab Spring. The February Revolution in Libya, which led to the overthrow and death of the Libyan leader Gaddafi in October 2011, created a power vacuum that contributed to the spread of extremist groups in the Western Sahel that threatened stability in the region.
I can't stand the word empathy, actually. I think empathy is a made-up New Age term that it does a lot of damage.
I think it's worth it. I think it's worth to have the cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year.
This is not going to end well. Charlie Kirk is dead. He was shot yesterday while debating at a college campus, and as of my recording this, the shooter is still at large. What I'm about to say will probably piss some of you off, and I probably will lose some subscribers and patrons over it. But I don't care. The truth needs to be said because no one in the mainstream is talking about this. Before I pull the pin out of the grenade, though, I want to make it abundantly clear that I do not condone violence, and it is a dark place that we've come to in American politics where this is what people feel like they have to resort to. Simultaneously, I refuse to fly this flag at half-mast today because the man who died yesterday was not a hero. As I speak, there is a concerted effort to turn him into a martyr, to weaponize his death as a justification for right-wing retaliatory violence. Without the public really being truly aware of who this man actually was and the horrific things that he stood for. Charlie Kirk's death isn't a tragedy because we lost one of the good ones. It's a tragedy because of what it represents for American democracy in the dark times that are to come. Because Charlie Kirk was one of the worst stains on the reputation of my country. I don't say this to be tactless. This is a man who called Martin Luther King awful and not a good person, stating that the passage of the Civil Rights Act was a huge mistake.
We note in our piece that Kirk describes King as, quote, a bad guy. It's true. And Kirk self-described very, very radical view that the country made a mistake when it passed the Civil Rights Act. Also true. And the Civil Rights Act, though, let's be clear, created a beast, and that beast has now turned into an anti-white weapon.
He sowed division wherever he went. He promoted conspiracy theory garbage like the Great Replacement Theory, which states that rather than white people being able to live in harmony with other races, minorities are plotting to replace us. He promoted 2020 election fraud conspiracies so effectively that despite them being repeatedly proven false in court by Trump's own appointed justices, millions of Americans still believe them to this day. During the pandemic, even as Trump's own administration was pumping billions of dollars into Operation Warp Speed, attempting to rapidly create and test a vaccine, rather than taking this emergency as an opportunity to help unite America, he turned on doctors and spread pseudoscientific misinformation and anti-vax conspiracy theories, calling vaccine mandates medical apartheid. He organized COVID-19 skepticism campaigns on college campuses, which he painted as exercises in critical thinking, but in reality, they were super spreader events where unvaccinated attendees caught the deadly virus and breathed their last breath from a ventilator weeks later, separated from their families. He painted gun deaths as inevitable, and as the bodies piled up, creeping into the thousands during Trump's first term, as children bled out, gripping the hands of their parents in hospital beds around the nation, he nonchalantly stated that gun deaths are an unfortunate but acceptable cost of preserving the Second Amendment. And as LGBT kids across America struggled to come to terms with their identity and faced bullying and religious discrimination, leading to the highest rates of suicide of any demographic, he fomented hatred towards trans people, further stigmatizing an already trampled on and vulnerable minority struggling to simply exist, falsifying statistics to paint them as the problem. Even up until his final breath, Charlie Kirk had blood on his hands. He defended the Israeli genocide in Gaza and downplayed Russia's violent invasion of Ukraine as merely a border dispute. And in response to skilled legal immigrants from India strengthening our economy, he stated that America doesn't need more visas for people from India, claiming that they would simply displace American workers. And while women with ectopic pregnancies bled out in hospital parking lots because their doctors were terrified of the new legal repercussions of performing life-saving abortions, Kirk, always the confident fool, touted that abortion was worse than the Holocaust.
So you're comparing abortion to the Holocaust?
Absolutely I am. In fact, it's worse. It's worse.
It's really not.
And said that if his 10-year-old daughter was raped, he would force her to carry it to term.
So if you had a daughter and she was 10 and she got raped, would you want her to go through that and carry her with baby?
That's awfully graphic.
It's no, but it's a real life scenario that happens to many people.
The answer is yes, the baby will be delivered.
And as millions of Americans struggled to pay rent, Kirk's solution to the housing crisis was to put more people in prison.
I said, honestly,
To the Murdochs, long may we live.
Amen.
I said, honestly, we should be much tougher on crime. We need more people in jail. We need more arrests.
America has more prisoners than any country on earth, and one of the highest per capita rates. If you believe that this is the land of the free, I've got a rude awakening for you. But when asked by policymakers what his top recommendation was for the Republican Party, he stated that
We do not have enough people in jail in this country.
this was a community college dropout influencing top Republican lawmakers. He believed that university was a scam, and the only good reason for women to go to it was to find a husband.
I'm Addie and I'm 14. I'm a freshman in high school.
I think there is an argument to bring back the MRS degree. And, no, seriously. And just be clear, that's why you're going to college, right? Don't lie to yourself, I'm studying. studying sociology. No, you're not. We know why you're here, and that's okay. I say college is a scam, but if you're going to find your life partner, like, that's actually a really good reason to go to college. And so, yeah, you could go learn some stuff. That's fine, I guess, or whatever. Just don't listen to your professors.
Charlie Kirk had no formal education in political science or sociology or criminology, and despite the U.S. having a heavily militarized, needlessly violent police force, which already has tragically higher rates of police shooting than any other developed country on Earth, Kirk proposed that we get tougher on crime and bring back public executions.
In fact, I even think that we should bring back, public executions on certain people. No,
This was not a champion of free speech. This was one of the most vile mouthpieces of America's dark political underbelly, spewing absolute toxic filth. And yet, he was one of the most influential people in the nation, rubbing shoulders with the president and helping sway an election that's led to the downfall of democracy in the installment of a convicted felon and accused pedophile in the White House. Kirk's organization, Turning Point USA, hired over 1,000 employees who swayed hundreds of thousands of voters. He helped roll back LGBT rights, voting rights, immigration rights, and for the first time in history, our daughters will have fewer rights than their grandmothers. In his short life, Charlie Kirk managed to do more damage and more harm than almost any other American in the last 50 years. And yet, his death was quickly politicized as a tragedy. Trump announced that he would posthumously give him the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest honor a civilian can receive. I'm sorry, but are we all just gonna forget the abhorrent way that Trump treated an actual war hero, John McCain, and the way that he responded to his death? Oh, and Trump also declared that the flag should be flown nationwide at half-mast for 4 days. When 2 Democratic legislators in Minnesota were shot, they received callous indifference from the president. There were over 140 school shootings in the U.S. in Trump's first term alone. Do you know how many times he flew the flag at half-mast for them? Twice. This is disgraceful. Hundreds, even thousands of firearm deaths are merely unfortunate statistics. So I'm sorry that I'm not shedding a tear over the man who said,
I think it's worth it. I think it's worth to have the cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year.
school shootings are almost uniquely an American problem. But Charlie Kirk presented a false dichotomy. You can either have freedom or you can give up your guns, as if every free democracy has citizens armed to the teeth, and as if we couldn't at least enact some sensible gun control laws. The biggest tragedy about Charlie Kirk's death was his wasted potential. Here was a bright, capable young man with resources and serious drive who could have accomplished so much good, and instead, he spread Handmaid's Tale levels of theocratic dystopia. And had he actually read his Bible rather than simply using it as a prop to bludgeon those he looked down on, he might have taken a warning from Christ that those who live by the sword will die by the sword.
True.
I will teach you how to build a $373 a day AI-powered online business in 3 days.
The extent of Kirk's injuries, the University Alert says the suspect is in custody and police are investigating. Let's go to Justice correspondent Scott McFarland now. Scott, what are you learning?
This was a publicly advertised event by this conservative media icon, Charlie Kirk. It began at 2 p.m. on the East Coast, 12 p.m. local time in Utah. A public remarks, a public speech in front of a large crowd at Utah Valley University, an enormous school in central Utah. The FBI director, Kash Patel, has issued a statement saying, "We're closely monitoring reports of the tragic shooting involving Charlie Kirk at Utah Valley University." And the governor of Utah, Spencer Cox, says, "I'm being briefed by law enforcement following the violence directed at Charlie Kirk during his visit to Utah Valley University today." The law enforcement presence there is likely to include the FBI, and Utah Valley University has a police force, so does the community of Warren, Utah. But at this point, we're going to lean on what the FBI and governor are saying, that this is a violent act that involved Charlie Kirk. His remarks have ended as the violence broke out there in Warren, Utah. Royce.
Scott, best you can tell at this point, obviously very early in the investigation and the situation, but it appears single gunman, single shot. Is that correct?
Well, the videos that are coming in, which we are working with our CBS News team, confirmed team to verify, have sounds in them consistent with gunshots, but we're going to leave This is a rally of sorts. Everybody there seemingly would have some phone. There's video, there's audio. In fact, to get into this event today, you had to acknowledge that the videos of you would be usable for Charlie Kirk and his team. This is a heavily photographed event, but we'll be cautious right now with the videos we see coming in voluminously from sources at the scene.
Okay, Scott McFarlane, thank you. And it does not appear at this point that anyone else has been hurt, again, as best we can tell. We do have video that has come into our newsroom. This is the event in Utah. Kirk speaking. A shot is heard, and then we stop the video here before he is struck, and he falls out of sight, and the people who took this video scrambled to get away to some kind of safety. Obviously, a lot of panic, a lot of fear, and people trying to just get out of there once this shooting went.
Assalamu alaikum. Thanks to all my subs and supporters who watch, like, share, and comment on the videos. It's greatly appreciated. Anybody who would like to support the channel, the link to my book, The N-Word is No Secret in the Service, is in the description of every video. We also have the Runaway Slave store, link in the description. Go grab yourself a souvenir or something like that. Let's cook.
Oh shit, I've never been so pissed in my whole life. I just murdered Charlie Kirk right here in Utah. I'm so freaking pissed right now. This is bullshit. I just saw blood squirting out of his neck. I love that guy. He would have been our next president. I am so pissed right now. Why do they always come with fucking violence? Gosh damn it. You're the freaking voices. They're talking to you people. Who shot Charlie Kirk? I'm driving in a problem right now. I'm so pissed. Damn it.
People, to be honest, I didn't even know who this guy Charlie Kirk was. I know more about him now in his death than I did when he was living. I may have even heard him before. I may have even used a soundbite from him before in a video or something, just off the rhetoric and not knowing who he was. I'm not sure. You know, I never listened to him on the show for more than a few minutes. Probably, I don't even know. I do not know who this guy. If somebody said, "Hey, who's Charlie Kirk?" point to him, I wouldn't have been able to do it, okay? I know who certain white Satanists are, like Nick Fuentes and others. I know who their coons are. I know who a few other guys are, but I didn't know who this guy is. But the thing about it is, you don't have to know too many of these people, and it's not good to know too many of them. If you met one, you met them all. They're all the same people, same violent rhetoric, hateful rhetoric. That's what they do.
I think it's worth it. I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year, so that we can have the Second Amendment. I think it's worth it. I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year, so that we can have empathy and sympathy. I can't stand the word empathy. Actually, I think empathy is a made-up New Age term that it does a lot of damage. But empathy and sympathy. I can't stand the word empathy. Actually,
This video is in regards to Charlie Kirk. And this video is for the fucking liberals. It's war, motherfuckers. We're coming for you. We're coming for you. And spare me your fucking self-righteous bullshit lectures. I don't give a fuck. We're coming for you.
So there you go, American Horror Story type stuff. White supremacist American MAGA supporter, a conservative white man disregards history as long as it's related to black people. Once you met one, I mean, you met them all. Now, it's very obvious that this guy was a violent white boy, called for violence, had no regard for people who had violent things happen to them, tweets George Floyd and stuff like that, very insensitive. Me personally, people, I don't care what happens to somebody like him. Somebody like him is clearly my enemy, somebody who used their voice to promote violence himself. I don't have to say anything. I got my own rules and protocol that I'm responsible for, and I don't have to be on the internet, you know, cheering and celebrating and all that other stuff and making jokes or whatever. But I don't care. Me, I don't care. I just keep it moving. Me, I say Allahu Alam. Now he has to deal with everything that he did, all the rhetoric that he put out, the hateful, evil things that he said. It's over, you know. But that brings me to my next part. I see a lot of coward behaviors from quite a few of you Negroes who are using this opportunity right here to soft shoot. I have my own belief about how I'll respond to these things when they happen. But I'm sure not telling nobody how to respond or how to care or what they should and shouldn't be doing or if they're wrong or right for cheering about this on the internet. That's them. I'm not going to do that. Okay? I would never tell another black person or anyone that it's wrong for them to celebrate and cheer when a violent person who claimed to be their enemy or was their enemy became a victim of violence by one of his own people. White on white violence. Speaking about black on black violence in one of the whitest states in America, he gets pushed by one of his own people. I would never tell a black person or anybody how to respond to a violent person being taken out in a violent way, especially somebody who they consider their enemy. And a person who they feel hated them, he hated them. It is what it is. That's them. They want to cheer, they want to applaud or respond with cold comments, you know, like Carlie Kirk did, like this boy right here did, in response to violence. So be it. They can. Again, it is what it is. If they want to cheer and applaud and respond with cold comments, okay, like Carlie Kirk did in response to violence, so be it. They can. And I noticed that I'm seeing quite a few of you bootlegs out here, quite a few of you Negroes trying to soft shoot and use this opportunity to show white people that you're a bigger person. That's also a part of cooning. I don't know, people, if you notice, when things happen, you always get these Negroes that try to pop up, you know, and I'm going to show white people that I'm bigger than that. Shut up. That's coward stuff. That's tampon behavior. Actually, in my opinion, that's backdoorian behaviors. Like Corey Holcomb says, that's backdoorian type. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of you are creating a fake storyline to support your soft shoe behaviors. Ifatunde. 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 You one of them. You out here acting like a coward. You out here acting like a coward. But I see why you have to soft shoe right now, Umar Johnson, Umar Ifatunde. I see why you have to soft shoe right now. Yeah, you acting like a coward. Yes, you're one of them. You're one of them. I read something by him. I am ashamed to see members of my community celebrating this situation. I would never ask you to mourn the loss of the enemy of our race, but to celebrate an unaliving is unacceptable. I would never rejoice at the loss of life of anyone who hasn't directly participated in the unaliving of a member of the black African race. That's Oppie rhetoric right there. That's Oppie rhetoric right there, and that's weak, that's backdoorian type, that's cowardly. First off, Umar, any one of you other Negroes with this mindset, how do you know that he never directly participated in taking a black person's life? That's number one. How do you know that? Do you know what kind of clubs or organizations these Satanists are with, or what they have to do, or eat, or, you know, act out in order to move up in rank? Do you know that, Ifatunde? Do you know? Okay, also, influential white people don't need to participate directly in an unaliving of a black person. This is a white supremacist. This is a guy right here that some people are calling for to be president. Big platforms, very influential. Do you see how white people are responding? Okay? When you have this kind of influence, you don't need to go out with a knife or a gun and do the job. You know what I'm saying? You speak. People who worship you and idolize you, especially these sick, deranged, psychotic white Americans, they do things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, do you think that white supremacists who have did mass shootings of black people, okay, just think about that, mass shootings of black people were not influenced by some white guy who said something but didn't do nothing, wrote something, maybe out fishing, maybe at home, maybe somewhere with his boyfriend or his little boy toy, may have even passed away. You don't think people like Leopold or the Grand Wizard of a certain lodge had to go, you think that they had to go out and actually act? No, you don't. Once you become influential, your words are even more dangerous than you actually doing the act, okay? They're more dangerous.
And let me show you what he's talking about. Watch this.
Terror on the campus of Evergreen High School, 30 miles west of Denver.
Use caution. Active shooter still down at the...
Shout out to Taylor Publishing.
A massive emergency response after a shooter opened fire right about noon. Students students evacuating the school as police rushed in.
I now have 2 students performing CPR.
The sheriff's department says 3 victims were rushed to St. Anthony Hospital in Denver. One of them, the shooter.
One patient has non-life-threatening injuries and is stable. The other 2 are critically injured.
It happened in Jefferson County, Colorado, also home to Columbine High School, where 16 people were massacred in 1999, among the worst high school shootings in history. And it comes amid a violent start to the school year. 23 people shot nationwide, including 2 who died. Colorado Governor Polis posting on X today, students should be able to attend school safely and without fear across our state and nation. We are all praying for the victims and the entire community. The sheriff's department says they have now cleared the school and there is no ongoing threat to the community.
All right. Peace and blessings. Peace and blessings. All praises due to the Most High. Now, on the heels of the Carlie Kirk assassination, another school shooter, this time in Jefferson County, Colorado, 30 miles away from Denver, has shot up another school. And this happened once again at Evergreen High School, if I'm not mistaken. And I must say, you can call me what you want to, but pretty sure that this is a white shooter. And that's going to make a difference later on in the video. But this is, as the person said, the 23rd persons have been shot. I think they said it's been about 47 school shootings this year. I'm going to ask you, how many of those school shootings do you think were performed by black people?
You've done something you can't be forgiven.
Just want to play that video, but see, this is what the students asked Carlie Kirk, but he heard the gangs. And it was the same day when he got shot, it was the same day the shooting was.
I'm going to pray all is well. Fix my seat, because sometimes I have to be leaning back and all that. But I just wanted to do a quick live here about the whole Carlie Kirk situation. And first, I want to start off by saying that I don't condone violence. I don't condone, things like this, as far as shootings and things along that line. So I want to make sure you guys are clear. Again, I don't condone violence, especially when we start dealing with gun violence and things along this line. So I want to preface my thoughts starting with that. But I want to make it clear. Let's not behave that this individual was a good person, at least for our community. I made a post about the situation with, showing an image of Carlie Kirk, and, with him, a comment that he made about George Floyd, right? He called him a scumbag, and he did a number of speeches about George Floyd. And not just George Floyd, but our entire community. He made a lot of racist comments about our community. And so, in one breath, many want to say that we should be concerned and praying and all this other stuff, or being mindful that he left behind a wife and children. But my question to you is, was he conscientious of George Floyd leaving behind a daughter who had to see on the news, on social media, you name it, comments stating that he wasn't murdered, comments stating that he was overweight, and maybe that's what caused him to not be able to breathe when the cop had the knee to his neck. All kinds of things that was very, very, very hurtful things. To the point that Stephen Jackson had to speak out against it. A man that was murdered in cold blood, suffocated. Or not suffocated, what they call it, what's the other term? I can't think of it off the top of my head, but,
asphyxiated.
A knee to his neck, the back of his neck, and he said he couldn't breathe for several minutes. Actually, I think it lasted for 10 minutes. I want to say to many of those that are in our community that call yourselves Christians, Charlie Kirk.
Hey, Mr. Wealthy Podcast, man. Today I got my boy Glow in the building. You feel me? I got my boy Dion in the building. Y'all know who these fellas is.
Charlie Kirk is supposedly a Christian, and yet he was saying all kinds of, asphyxiated, that's what I was looking for that word. He, under the Christian title, he made a lot of comments about our community, racial comments, racist comments about our community. Making it clear he didn't feel no empathy, even with his discussion about reparations, all the things that we've been subjected to. He had no empathy for all the things that we had to deal with as a people. And basically rebranding things of our struggles and packaging it into the so-called white struggle, white suppression. Again, I don't condone violence, but you're not going to tell me that I have to be mindful of someone that I know was not a good person, at least for our community. This is where that Stockholm Syndrome kicks in. This is where the cognitive dissonance kicked in, especially for us as Negroes. That, when something happened, especially to Massa, all of a sudden, let's pray for Massa. After Massa had a history of enslaving your entire family, raping your daughters, in many cases your son, butt breaking your dad, or butt breaking your brother, all these different things. But then we have this mindset, this thing that we was programmed to through religion, to try to make a comparison, because in the comments, you guys can see it. I had to remove some of them because it was very ugly. They said, hey, well, George Floyd was a bad person. What makes Charlie Kirk a good person? What's the criteria? What's the baseline of what makes a person a good person? Right? What makes him a good person? Right? And I want you guys to make sure you this Twister Chaser, because see, Twister Chaser, see, when you make comments like that, like I'm next, don't think you can hide behind a fake screen name. I can find out who you are. Your fake screen name is attached to a YouTube account. Your YouTube account, whether you're on your phone or not, you have what is called the IP address. That is your signature. And I can find out who you are. Have knocks coming to your door. So, I'm not hard to find. So I want you guys to take a screenshot of what this person pointed out. See,
A day after Netanyahu orders the murder of Palestinian negotiators in Qatar, Charlie Kirk is killed in Utah. Before I begin, I want to say Tucker Carlson is right to question the U.S. government's narrative concerning the 9/11 attacks. Tucker's actually said, of course I didn't allege that the Jews did it. I don't even know what that means. I think in fact saying things like that is a way to discredit real questions. Now, we know a member of Netanyahu's clan owned the trade towers and had the power to mine those buildings with explosives. That we know. Tucker went on to say, Benjamin Netanyahu, on camera, right after the attacks, he said it was a good thing because it brings the United States into a conflict that we've been involved in on an existential level for decades. Now, we know the trade towers were pre-wired with demolition explosives because the third tower fell on its own and no plane struck it, in addition to what appeared to be timed explosions on floors in the other two towers. Maybe the plane taken down in Pennsylvania by passengers was intended for the 47-story third tower. We saw what Netanyahu did this week in Qatar, a U.S. ally. Clearly, he is out of control and operates within the United States with impunity. Last year, members of his clan branded Charlie Kirk an anti-Semite. In 10 years, Kirk, he probably would have become president of the United States, and he has a great sway with young people, most of whom do not bend to worship Netanyahu's clan's golden calf. Tucker stated something myself and others indicated after 9/11 attacks. He said, we know that a group of Israeli art students, who clearly were not art students, clearly some of them were aligned with the Israeli intelligence, were arrested and held for quite some time in the United States before being released without charges. And we know that a group of them, I'm quoting an FBI document, not the internet, filmed the attacks on 9/11 and seemed to have foreknowledge of those attacks. Now that is true. I am aware of that. In the assassination of Charlie Kirk, a second suspect was arrested as the shooter of Charlie Kirk, but now appears to have been released, while still holding another man on different charges. Now, according to initial reports, the shooter, whose identity has not been made public, he wore dark clothes and he fired from a long distance from a rooftop. We have video of that. They haven't recovered the gun yet. There is video of him on the rooftop and even running after taking that shot that killed Kirk. Now, before Kirk was shot, the first question he was asked was if he knew how many mass shooters were transgender. His answer was too many. Oh, well, that is true. Charlie Kirk was married and had 2 children, a son and a daughter. His killing was extremely vicious, with 1 bullet to the neck from a high-powered rifle from a long distance. There was an article written by Jonathan Weissman on July 15, 2024 in New York Times entitled, Charlie Kirk, long accused of anti-Semitism, is set for a primetime speech. A user on Elon Musk's social media site posted an anti-Semitic screed that claimed that Jewish people were, quote, coming to disturbing realizations that immigrants to the United States don't exactly like them too much. The post was an apparent reference to the unsubstantiated white replacement theory that Jews are orchestrating the dilution of white power by allegedly encouraging mass immigration. Well, it is correct that Ashkenazim, they do play a major role in support of illegal immigration into the United States, just as the Roman Catholic Church does. To the user's comment on the X platform, Elon Musk responded, "You have said the actual truth." New York Times then said Mr. Musk drew outrage for that comment and Mr. Kirk defended him. That is Elon Musk on his radio show and podcast last November, quoting Kirk as saying, quote, Jewish communities have been pushing the exact kind of hatred against whites that they claim to want people to stop using against them, close quote. New York Times. So, some of those among Netanyahu's clan do demean other whites, indicating they are inferior to them, and even calling them their slaves. The goys, our slaves. They actually believe it, and there is truth to other whites being subservient to them. The New York Times also indicated around that time conservatives had seemed ready to jettison Mr. Kirk and his organization. This is Eric Erickson, a commentator who has been in the mainstream of American conservatism. He wrote in a post that Turning Point USA was looking like not just a grifting operation, but an anti-Semitic grifting operation. Now, most know that once members of Netanyahu's clan, including the ADL, brand you, especially if you are white and anti-Semite, things start going over the cliff. The New York Times then wrote, Ben Domenech, a co-founder of the Federalist, wrote, if Charlie Kirk remains the head of Turning Point USA, the right has an anti-Semite problem that will follow them into the coming elections. Red flag. This meant Charlie Kirk either rendered himself to their altar or they would surely crucify him. However, when some come into the knowledge of the truth, their heart remains fixed on that truth. Even though they know in order to function as a man, as a father, and as a husband, you have to throttle that truth and let it flow in the future, maybe. There are those who will snuff out that future with an assassin's bullet. And it looks like that is what happened to Charlie.
Wow. More truth coming out about this situation with Charlie, huh? But now you see what people been telling people about. More stuff that what he believed, what he put on the post. Now it's coming back to bite him. It bit him. And he's about to, and they were saying he had the potential. So the potential, that's why people get really irate. But you heard about the other commentaries. And when he mentioned about mentioned about mass shootings, which happened at a school in Colorado, you see what happened. It wasn't in the inner city. It was in the suburbs. A suburban town. And people think that evil is supposed to be in the city. But they never think it's going to be next door in the suburbs or in a rural area. And they live it, and then you have people that take flight out in the places, thinking that they're going to be safe in a utopia. Find out they're not. And people are shook because they thought it was supposed to be one of those people over there, all because of different ethnic skin and everything. So they push the rhetoric, and they find out the evil can look just like them, and people that can't stand them have hatred in their heart, just like them. He had hateful rhetoric, and the rhetoric caught up, just like them. Now, there's a possibility this could be this case with this. I don't know what he's saying, but at the end of the day, his mouth spoke what it really was. So the moral of the story is, you have to be careful what you speak, what you stand on, because you can be paid the price. It's one thing to have freedom of speech, but how the way you word things. And division is not one of them. And so now his family has to live with it. And people are, it's shaking up. It's not going to think like it used to. And times are going to get worse. More stuff like this gonna happen. Not in the places that you think it is, not in Chicago where Trump is sending it. The madness is not in the inner cities. The madness could be out there in their neck of the woods. And they just don't see it, ladies and gentlemen. That's America for you. Take care, everybody. See you on the next video.